will be in next week?
Possibly, but the only reason I'm being hesitant is I don't want to make sure I find us a class short, and ideally we want to do the exam in our double period on the Fridays. But by Friday I'll know where we are, and then I can let you know for certain.
Just give us a week.
It could be. I don't think there's anything wrong with assuming that it's a week Friday, but I'm just not 1,000% sure. That's where it's at. Yeah, but by Friday I'll know. Okay. So if you're trying to make work plans or whatever, to say it's a week from this Friday is quite possibly correct. Okay. Because I just want to make sure we get through all of this stuff here. It's not like here it is the day before the exam and we're still finishing content. If anything, I'd rather push it a week and be one period into the next stuff, but making sure we got everything covered and you've had time to ask questions and you've had homework practice time and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, we'll see. But I think a week Friday is quite possible.
Also, will you be letting us know the exam pattern?
I think I know what you said, but say it again, please.
The exam pattern, how will it be like the questions? Total questions and...
Yeah, we'll be covering everything you've studied so far in the course. Yeah, let me get the recording on, just because I might as well get it captured, and then that way if anybody's replaying it, you've got it written somewhere, or recorded somewhere. Okay, welcome to the May 9th edition of Accounting 605 for Group N. Just diving in, the first question from the floor is basically, what's the exam breakdown? It's probably going to be 4 questions in a 2-hour time period. And the first question is going to be make a set of financial statements, not necessarily the whole set. You only you don't have enough time to do the whole set. Okay, but any one of the 3 that you are asked to come up with, you could be asked to do, or you could be asked to comment on what you see in a cash flow statement. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but you're preparing at least one financial statement for your first question. Your second question will be dealing with cost, volume, profit from Chapter 8, which will be basically looking at what's my profitability per unit, if this cost changed, how did my break-even point change, that kind of stuff. So that'll be your second question. Your third question will be dealing with financial statement analysis with the ratios from Chapter 13. I'm going to give you the formulas. Just cover that here right now. And what that means, by the way, in one breath, you may wish I didn't give you the formulas, because it means I really discount what the marks are worth. Because if I'm giving you the formula, then I'm not going to give you like 4,000 marks for calculating the ratio that I just gave you the formula for. There's going to be a mark, but I'm just saying most of it's going to flip to doing what managers should be doing, and that is interpreting what it means. That is scary for you because it's not something you can memorize per se, and it comes with having a lot of business wisdom to understand what those ratios might be showing you. So how do you learn wisdom? The answer is you don't, or at least not easily. So it's understandable if that's concerning, and it's triple concerning because at least 3/4 of you, for want of a better word, are trying to memorize your way through the exams. And what I mean by that, that's not a bad thing. I mean, you're trying to do it by rote. I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. And how do you do something like that that's judgmental? And the answer is you can't. So that's why it's scary. Having said that, don't panic. You're probably going to be asked to create a set of financial statements, calculate several ratios, and then explain what you think that might mean to you, what some of those results might mean. And the easiest way to prepare yourself for thinking is pretend you were an investor or you're a manager running this company. are these 3 or 4 ratios you just calculated, are they telling you something good, bad, whatever about the company? And keep in mind, this is all new for you. I'm not expecting all kinds of great brilliance here. Having said that, I've seen some really good stuff come out of 605 students. But I'm just saying, you're trying to pick up on what little things those ratios might be saying that either make you feel good about the company or might maybe make you feel concerned about. And then it might be something like, so if you were going to invest $1 million in this company, how would you feel? Is there something that worries you, or do you see an opportunity with it? So more on that later, but that's probably going to be the one it's going to be the harder one for you to prepare for, because to memorize the formulas and calculate something that you can prepare for, and I do encourage you to study. Don't sit back and pretend that, oh, he's giving me the formulas, that'll be okay. You do want to do a question or 2 or 3 from chapter 13. Well, I'll see if I can come up with some for you, and all this kind of stuff. But you do want to, say, what is this thing really trying to tell me? At least at a simple level. And we can talk through a couple of examples of that. I don't know how far Greg got with you on some examples of that. Did you do many in class?
No.
Okay, so more to the point of when do we do that? You see why I'm saying I'm being hesitant? I want to make sure that you've got a reasonably good chance, where we can talk through some of this rather than springing a midterm on you and you're going, okay? So we'll make sure. I'll put it on my shopping list here and make sure we do some review questions and give you some idea what to expect. The last question you'll have is from the stuff we're doing right now. This one, I think, is easier to learn than the ratio in some ways. I think it might be the hardest question of the test, though. And I'm only saying that because there's like about 6 types of decisions here. You're only going to get one of them because we've only got a limited amount of time here. But you don't know which, so you're studying all 6. And while they can be kind of learned cookie cutter, it's 6 things to learn cookie cutter. That's a lot to absorb. So it just might be the harder. It depends. If it's one of the ones you studied and picked up on really well, it'll be great. But if it's the one you didn't study and hoped you wouldn't get on the test, because nobody ever does that. How many of you have ever studied and said, well, I'm going to be dead if this type of question hits, and so you don't study it and you hope that it doesn't, and then sure enough it's on the test? Anybody ever had that happen in life? Yeah. So I can relate. But it'll be a question that's picking one of the methods that we're covering here for you to study and work through. What I do want to emphasize, the exam is not going out of its way to try to trick you. Okay? I want to say that like crazy. It's likely, in my eyes, stuff that's going to be fairly straightforward for you. I'm not trying to pull tricks on it. Throw a curveball at you or anything like that. In some ways, I probably should, but no, no. But I'm just happy if you guys are getting the basics of how any of these 4 questions work. To case in point with the financial statement preparation, unless a couple of you have had an introductory accounting course somewhere in previous studies, and if you have, you're about one of about 2 students out of about 400 I've ever had in this type of course that have ever done that. Most of you really aren't familiar with the things. How are you going to pull this together on a week and a half's, 2 weeks worth of content? And you don't even have something in the book you can go really study. You just got some PowerPoints and a few exercises. So I got to take that into account here. Make sure the stuff's fairly straightforward. Don't want to lull you into a sense of false security. You do need to work and study and like you would anything else. I'm just trying to say this, I'm not trying to trick you. In fact, I'm even breaking a rule of mine, at least with midterm, Did I ever mention how SAS Polytech's grade systems work? I forget which classes I said this to. Okay, probably did coming into this. The official playbook that they hand instructors say that an average student is supposed to get in the 60s. That's if you are just a normal student coming through here with basic knowledge of a course, you ought to be able to pull off a 60, like something in that range. If you're above average, that's the 70s. If you are exceptional, that's in the 80s, and outstanding is in the 90s. Nobody really wants to know what the 50s are, but that's below average. And what's the Harry Potter term for below 50s? I think it was D for dreadful. Anyway, we all know what below 50s like. But anyway, point being is, average student ought to be able to get a 60 on the exam. The only reason I mention this is that means there's usually roughly 10% of an exam that's aimed at that over 90 category and whatever. That's usually tricky or hard or whatever. Just 10%. I'm not talking like a major question. I said there's 4 questions, that's 25%. But maybe there's a part B or a D or a C or something there that asks something that's a little bit tricky. And that's for the keeners in the class, who can get above 90 if they know it. And by and large for this course, I don't do that. Like, I don't purposely throw something that's technically hard. But in a normal exam, I would. You'd get roughly 10% of the questions, some shape or form, that would be hard. If you actually feel like you did see something like that in this test, then what you say is, aha, this is his harder question meant for the students over 80 or something. I don't care about that. I'm just shooting for my 60. I move on to the next thing, if you follow me. The test will be set that if you're an average student and have done a diligent amount of homework, prep work, studying, or whatever for this, you ought to be able to pull off 60s. I don't have my final marks from Friday yet for the winter groups that we're going through, but going into that final, almost every student had already passed the course. So the midterm you're about to write, they did that. Their other assessments or so that were along the line, they had enough. I had about 5 students that hadn't passed it yet, but most were just below the 50 threshold. I think the worst student that was going into the final had to get 40% on the final exam to pass. That was the worst student. And if you were just holding at 40%, that's scary because that's consistent to what you've done on all the other assessments. But what I'm saying is most of the students were well above that. Okay, so I'm just saying that as a mode of, I would be surprised if you are that different than the last 3 or 4 classes I've taught, as a group. So you probably will be okay. But yes, you have to study, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? We'll probably talk more about it, so later as well. All right, where did we leave off? We left off in our make and buy, where we said they had a $30 part, but we said, I'm just quickly summarizing, we said some of these costs we really aren't incurring, like the depreciation and the overhead, those are all bought and paid for. The only costs we really incur to make our part are the variable costs to make it and the supervisor's salary. So that really worked out to be, to make 20,000 units, a total of $340,000. We said we could buy the part from the supplier instead, and it would be $500,000. Don't do it. That's kind of where we almost left off. Then I said, what if you had this situation where somebody comes running into the management team office and says, we have this incredible opportunity to make $200,000 after all costs. $200,000 after all costs. The problem is I need skilled workers to do the work to make that 200,000. And the HR people look at this and they say, we cannot find workers in our community. It would take too long to train them. If we use untrained people, we're gonna botch it and our reputation's gonna be harmed. And we'll probably have to pay settlements and stuff. And so instead of making 200,000, we're probably gonna pay 200,000 or something instead. We can't find the right skilled labor. And the HR person says, oh, woe is us. If only these people were not making this part, we could retask them to do this super duper special project. At which point, do you re-examine this decision? If I got the chance to take advantage of a $200,000 special, project here that's going to make us a ton of money, if only I had the labor, should I, at least for now, buy the part from someone else, free up these people to go do the special project? Yes or no? So first off, just raise your hand, nod, whatever, if you understand what I'm saying. Special project, we're taking the people, or we could take the people away from making here, make them do the special project, and then we buy for the short run. Sound good? That's the decision we're thinking about. I didn't see hands go up. You're okay with me that's the scenario that's being put in front of you here now? What if I don't make it, free up the people to do the special project? Okay? Should I do this? So the idea is we could do it, but should we do it? So let's take a vote. How many people think, sure, let's do it? It's okay, this isn't for marks. Gut impression, should we do it? Should we go after the special project, stop making this part temporarily, buy it for now? Should we do that? How many of you are thinking, no, we should keep making this and say, sorry, we're just not in a position to take advantage of the special opportunity right now? And the third case, which I think is more the major point, how many haven't a clue? Okay, fair enough, this is fair, okay? But we're learning here. Okay, are we good with this first, just before I get to our scenario? It would cost us outright $500,000 to buy the part. This is the real cost we have to put money out to make our part right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. I want to know if I am understanding okay. 500,000 is the cost of the product if we buy it.
Yes.
No? And $340,000 are if we make it.
The 340 is what it costs us to make a part.
To make the
If
product.
we're making the part, forget the 200,000 for a moment. If we're making the part in our company, it costs us $340,000 in cash going out to make the part, as opposed to $500,000 to buy it.
Okay.
So the decision as of Friday was, screw buying the part. We are going to make it because it's cheaper. It's costing us $340,000 to make it.
To make it, then to
So
buy it.
we're not going to buy it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what Friday's discussion was.
Yeah.
So I'm throwing a wrinkle at this here. This would be that 10% thing, if it was the test. Okay, but I'm throwing the wrinkle here. What if we have an opportunity, unrelated to this, to make $200,000 profit, clear of all expenses, if only I had the workers? And we realize we have the workers, but they're making this part, so they have no time available to make the special order.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, given the $200,000 opportunity here, should we stop making it, shift the workers, don't worry about the cost, it's the workers I'm concerned about, shift them to the special opportunity, and for the short run, buy? Should I do that?
I think you need more data to do the analysis. like we don't know like the price of the product, so we don't know like if we make and we sell it, or how much the profit that we can acquire to compare with the.
Okay, let me make that part a little bit easy. This is a good question, but I'm gonna make it easy for you. We are still going to need 20,000 parts here to do what we did before. And we know we're gonna get the 200,000 if only we can just do that 200,000 special order if I had the workers. So really, all of the discussion that's happening around the management table is, should I free up the workers to go after the $200,000 and for the short run buy the part? Everything's gonna carry on, otherwise, we're still gonna sell all 20,000 units there. It's just, instead of us making the part, do I buy it instead? So, no impact on the revenue of this decision if we make or buy, other than originally this is what it cost us, so that's why we were saying on Friday, we should do this. The cost to make it is lower than it was to buy it. But now I'm throwing a $200,000 prize at you, an opportunity. Should I take advantage of the opportunity?
Yes.
No. Yes.
You thinking yes?
Yes.
Why?
If we make a product, it will sell 160, and if there is another project where we will make a 2,000, then we can cover this 160, so we can have a profit of 40, maybe 1,400.
And I think you're entirely on the right track, if not completely on the right track. Here's how your answer changes if you were going to add this new thing into the decision. We can continue to make this part for $340,000. If we do that, we lose out on $200,000 of extra income. Let me say that a second time. We can continue to make the part for $340,000, but it means we lose out on the opportunity to make $200,000 because I can't do both. I'm either making the part or I'm pursuing the $200,000 opportunity because I have a constraint on my labor. I can't make the workers work two things. They either make the part or they do the opportunity. So, this is going to sound funny. Have we actually incurred a cost at not taking the opportunity? Theoretically, no. But wouldn't it have been nice to have that $200,000? Yeah. Okay? So, for the sake of the decision, we insert a line here. We can do this one of two ways, but I'm going to show it to you this way first. We can insert a line here, and we say, if we keep our workers making this part, all of this stays the same, but I have another cost called $200,000 of lost opportunity. I'm literally not going to get that money, so for my decision purposes, that's a cost. I'm literally going to add $200,000 to this column and say, lost opportunity if we make it. So, if I add $200,000 to this column, which column's got the lower amount now?
Our budgets.
Yeah. So what it would say in this case, we stop making it, take advantage of the $200,000 opportunity, buy the part. Because that lost opportunity adds to the cost here of making it in this particular case. When you hear the expression opportunity cost, this is literally what they mean. We have an opportunity, And it cost us $200,000 because we did not take advantage of it. That's one way you can write it up. The other way you can write it up, I don't care which you do, is you leave this column alone, and you can say, it's gonna cost me $500,000 to buy the part, but I'm gonna have a $200,000 offset to this cost. Because I can take advantage of the opportunity, that's gonna be $200,000 of revenue. So 500,000 less 200 is 300. That would be my net cost to buy the part and take advantage of the opportunity. 300,000 is less than 340, do the buy. Either way of writing it up is correct. If you were given an opportunity cost, you could do either way and you'd have it right. If you have an opportunity cost. But that's how you would evaluate that in the real world. I spared you my Harry Potter story. You know, the last films, like the part one of the Deathly Hallows, Harry made a choice. Do I go after Horcruxes or do I go after Super Wand? And in the end, he made the choice of going after Horcruxes, and that let the bad guy get the Super Wand. Opportunity cost. No, Ron piped up and said, "You had the chance to go after the Super Wand. Why didn't we go after the Super Wand?" Harry made a choice. There was an opportunity cost there, and it was giving the bad guy the wand. Normally we say you can't, the opportunity means you can't have both. Of course, you know, in the movie he ended up at both. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. At the time, that was the type of decision. Except this, we're doing it in manufacturing and monetary terms here. Okay. There's your make and buy thing with opportunity cost. Don't get too hung up on it. The only reason I'm making a big deal out of it in particular here is this is a very common thing you have in business decisions. You know, we got our day-to-day stuff where we evaluate it just like this. This happens even more commonly. But then somebody walks in and says, we have this opportunity to go after something, should we? And really what I'm just describing to you is so how do you decide if you should or not? And a lot of it boils down to it is, if it was only $100,000 opportunity, this would be a very different decision. $100,000 opportunity, I'm still making it and saying screw the opportunity. Okay, let's go take a look at another demo of this from the textbook. We are going to take a look at, get to it. So get to it. Come on, we can solve that. Okay, Futura company makes starters, as in something that starts a small engine. That it installs in farm tractors. Due to a reduction in output of some of its product, the company has idle capacity that could be used to make these parts instead of buying them. Chief engineer of the company says we should not do this. He looked at the costs, he added it all up, and he determined that the cost would be greater than the $2.60 that it would cost us to buy a starter. Now, I don't know how many of you are experts at small motor mechanics. I know a fair bit of theory of this stuff, but believe me, put me in front of the real thing, I wouldn't know what the hell I was doing. okay? But what I am gonna say, I know enough, I suspect enough, that it's one thing to assemble an engine or maintain it or something. A starter has got all kinds of very fine wires that have to be wound around things so you generate the proper magnetic field, and if you do it wrong, you don't get the right field that would create the effect to start it. And more to the point, if you do it really, really wrong, it short circuits and it all melts and you have a fire on your hands. So I think the skill set to make a starter is very different than assembling a farm tractor engine. But whatever, I didn't write the question. They've got extra time on their hands. Should we make the product? So we've got direct materials, direct labor, the two main costs for making the product per unit, plus the variable manufacturing overhead. We then have supervisor's cost, depreciation, and rent. So, which ones are the variable costs, which ones are the fixed costs? Yeah, so these are the fixed. And how the engineer came up with the cost is he literally took 90,000, divided it by the number of starters they're talking about making, and came up with 225. And same thing here, and same thing there. The question doesn't say how many starters we're making, but you guys are smart managerial candidates here. You know how a math formula goes? If you're given 2 out of 3 variables, you can solve for the third. Well, we got 2 of them. So 90,000 divided by $2.25. There's a number of units that they're creating or so here. Okay, same thing here. 60 divided by $1.50. You're going to get your 15,000. Sorry, what did I say? I said 50. It's not 50. Anyway, so if we, this is the other thing they're saying. The supervisor is going to have to get hired to supervise making all this. We've got enough tools. We've got rent on the factory of $148,000. Let me scroll that up a bit more. Okay. Should we make the starters? And the answer, given that I was prattling on about exams and everything at the beginning, I'm just going to call it up fast and dissect it. Come on, almost there. Okay. Here's the answer. This is what the engineer came up with, the 1380, pulling the information from the what you saw in the slide deck. So $4.65, $4.05. These are the amounts if you know, we were going to make the thing. We've got the variable overhead here. We've got the supervisor's cost divided in, and basically what we're going to look at, if it's going to be $12.60 to buy it, what can we save? Well, we would be saving materials if we buy it, the labor, the overhead, and the supervisor. We would have to incur those costs if we're making it. Do we have to, the engineer had $1.50 of depreciation built in, but we already owned all the tools and equipment. So are we incurring more cost here? Maybe for accounting purposes, but in reality, no. We've already owned the equipment. So it isn't going to cost us $1.50 here. Same thing with the rent. They said there's $148,000 of rent, but we're paying it already. So no extra cost. The only reason we're even having this discussion in the company is just simply that we've got extra labor sitting around with nothing to do, and somebody's asking the question, could we have them make the part instead? So we're not incurring any depreciation or extra rent. Yes, we would have to incur the variable costs and the costs of the supervisor. So if I take depreciation and rent out of the equation for what the engineer came up with, I really discovered that it's going to be not $1,380, but $1,185 to make the part, which is less than the buy. It's a worthwhile idea to have the people make the part in this case. We've got the labor, let's have them do it. So, what if time? What if it was slightly more? What if it was $1,380? Should we still think about having our workers make the part? Well, if I got workers that are skilled enough to make a starter and whatever else they do in their normal job around here, what happens if I don't have work for them? They fly away. They go and join my competitor. Is that a problem? Yeah. Okay. Most of the businesses we have these days are knowledge-based. It's not so much about manufacturing in the traditional sense anymore. So if I've gone to all this effort to get my staff and my technical people all trained to do something, I don't want them leaving. So am I better having a slightly higher cost of my product but keep them all employed? Possibly. I don't know, but I'm just saying that's a very realistic thing I would be weighing. One of my business clients that I used to have way back when, like little glass trophies and statues and things like that you can see when you go, you see somebody gets a plaque and it's really a piece of glass all etched and cut. And he was in that business of doing it, but he lived in the factory was in a small community. So I was surprised when he was showing me his financial stuff, and he said, "Oh yeah, I have to get a glass worker in here, and it's going to cost $120,000 for that person or more." And I said, "120? This was like 20 years ago cost, so probably be about 150 now. $150,000 for a glass etcher?" I said, "Is it that much skill?" And the guy said, "No, you're missing the point. If I have to hire a glass etcher, I'm only paying them $60,000 to $75,000. And I said, "So where did the other 60 or 75 come from?" And he said, "Because I now have to find a job for their spouse." I said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "No, think about this. I get a technical person here, working on the stuff here. Their spouse is in Hicksville. Maybe they're a doctor or something. Okay, and they're going, what am I going to do here in small town? So they suddenly see a job in big city somewhere. We're going to pack up and move. So the only way I can prevent that is I have to create a meaningful job for the spouse here, so nobody's thinking of moving." I said, that makes sense. So I'm just getting at here, depending what HR dilemmas you've got to factor that in here too. Maybe it's worth it protecting my people, not just because I'm an evil capitalist, but look after my people, than it is, do I always do just the cheapest thing? Now do realize there's a cost to this. So you still need to do all the math, figure out what the cost will be, and then say whatever the difference is, if it's something I can live with, then maybe that's the right decision. So that's stuff that we're not supposed to talk about in the course because it's against the finance plan. But I'm just saying the real world, know the financial ramification by doing the calculation, but then you still might say, yes, we should do this. If I'm trying to make sure my workers aren't thinking of going off somewhere else. Okay? Hopefully that reinforces stuff Stacy's talking about. Anyway, okay, so there's your demo here of seeing how this goes. Now, just in closing, usually some student pipes up and says, okay, now I'm worried. I said, what are you worried about? They said, you did a calculation here based on unit costs. Every other example in this chapter we've looked at has looked at total cost. Now I don't know what to do for the test. Right? The answer is whatever makes sense at the time. Because if you took this and multiplied it through by all the units, you're still going to come to the same answer. The one advantage you would have doing it, though, is you can actually see what the cost differential is. When I'm saying know what the cost is between the two, it would be very apparent if you did the whole thing on total cost. But you can work it out correctly with this, too. And I can tell that when I'm marking. You do it one way or the other. My solution set might have it both ways anyway. But I'm able to, I get paid the big bucks to be able to figure out, are you doing it per unit or for a total, and did you come to the correct decision still? Okay? So don't panic. I generally prefer doing it on the total just so you're seeing the big picture, but this is fine too. It's not wrong. Do whatever works in the moment to see that seemingly explains it best for you. Sometimes this is quicker. And it is about time on the test too. How do I manage my time? Okay. So that's the demo here for the make or buy. You can do exercise 9.4 if you want to practice one. And then when we meet on Friday or so, I can throw the answer. Well, you'll have the answer up on Brightspace anyway. Yeah. But if you want, we can look at it fast if necessary, and then I'll walk us into the next particular decision. So probably going to knock off 2 of them. Yeah. Okay. So that's it for today, folks. Have a good rest of your week. We'll see you Friday. In room, now we get to do it in the room right down the hall. That will be our permanent Friday room for the rest of our office. Okay? Until somebody changes the schedule.